What up? What up? What up? It is Josh Thomas here with a nightly, like our first ever Showdown tutorial video. I think we've done some of these in the past, but really, I'm gonna start this from scratch, right? Like I followed along a little bit today. Obviously just following along on the leaderboard. But so I am starting essentially directly from scratch. I haven't looked at any strokes gained data yet. I haven't looked at any birdies, anything like that. So, like I said, we are starting almost directly from scratch, and I want to kind of just show you guys where what my process looks like, and how that goes about. So I'm going to show you guys exactly like what I go through each step of the way. All right, so let's take a look here. I'm going to hop into our research station, and just like everybody else, I want to make a copy of that, which I've already done. And in there, you want to go over to this little tab here at the bottom that says Showdown Tools. So like I said, the first thing that I do every single time is this is the very first thing I look at. All right, I want to see who scores well in round two. All right. Like honestly, if you just relied on this and didn't look at any strokes gain data, didn't look at anything, you just relied on how they score round to round, you'd probably be pretty successful at Showdown. All right, so typically what we end up seeing here in the Showdown research station is a lot of these expensive guys at the top, right? So we've got Rory, we've got DJ, Justin Rose, Jordan Spieth, Morikawa. What I look for really typically, like we know that these guys are going to be good round two scorers. If they're studs, they are. What I want to see is if there's a big gap between like round one and round two. All right, so like DJ. DJ is a much better round two scorer. You can see there he's at round two is his best. All right, 40.11. Rosie's 3. But some of these guys like Woodland, obviously that's his best round. So we're gonna want to play Gary Woodland tomorrow. We got to look at tee times here in a second, but so stuff to remember here. Jim Furyk, he's got a big gap here. 30.84 to 37.76. It's not like he has a small sample size, right? You look over here, that's your sample size, and we can see that 69 rounds, and yeah, he's pretty good. Now, as we kind of roll over, we'll take a look over at the Showdown field ranks and things like that to get us maybe a little bit better idea of some of these guys. But like I said, if you just went off, like you ran this for 20, pulled off the top 20, as long as like the salaries were okay and just ran that in the DS, you'd be sitting pretty good. So other guys that have like a big gap jump, I see Harry Higgs, I see Sneds, right? So remember, you got to start a lot of times, like what I'll do is I'll get out a piece of paper and I'll start writing names down. All right. If you guys look in the cheat sheet, sometimes there'll be names, and then those names will get deleted. Sometimes I just use that as like my note sheet. But I want to, like I said, I want to know who is, good in round two first. That's my first basis, right? Is I want to see who is good in round two. Anybody else that really makes a jump here? Charles Howell III makes a big jump. Matt Jones, Sam Ryder makes a pretty big jump. Now John Ram goes the other way. Right. That's the other thing we can look at is somebody going one way or the other, like in that round two is not very good for them. So John Ram would be one of those guys. Bryson would be one of those guys. Guy who played really well today that makes a pretty big jump here, Victor Hovland. Right. So he's interesting tomorrow. But again, I think for our intents and purposes, I'm filming this for round two of the RBC Heritage. And, for our intents and purposes, I think we're going to really want to target AM tee times, right? We saw that the AM wave was much better today, and that's going to be something that we're going to look at going forward here tomorrow. Sebastian Munoz. A lot of these guys that were off in the morning are better second round scorers. That's annoying. Joaquin Niemann, that's one strokes gain data guy I looked at early today that I think is going to be interesting for tomorrow. Kevin Kisner, a little bit better. Bryce Garnett, excellent round two scorer. Mav McNeely, not as good, right? Again, just you go through and you kind of get a feel, and I'll come back to this page, right, and say, okay, wait, was that guy good in round two? So that's something that I always, I tend to look at quite a bit. as we get down here, again, some of these cheaper guys, it's hard to, get a feel for, but hey, 30 points, average, showdown fantasy point splits, 30 is not bad, right? So if you're scoring 30 points, you're not at the end of the world. Matt Neesmith, right? Round 2 is his worst, right? He was off in the morning. He's going to be chalky tomorrow. We're not going to play him. All right. Brian Gay, Mark Hubbard, again, another guy who went nuts today. Not touching him tomorrow, and that's something that I think we typically see just regardless, is that guys that we play one day that really do well. Typically there's something in their game that was above their baseline, and we have to expect that it's going to come back to their baseline tomorrow, or the next day. So, like I said, 150 golfers here. We get down towards the bottom. These are not guys that you really want to target. So that's the first thing I look at, right? Is I want to look at round 2, where you're at. All right. And then if we scroll over here, you can look and see. Yeah, I know it's not sunny out. I can click on this. No way, it's still sunny out. Yeah, I know. It's my background. It was 95 here yesterday. It was awful. 95 and 40 mile an hour winds. It was terrible. Okay, so back to this. The next thing I look at is I always look for top 5% and top 10% scoring. All right, so I'm just going to sort by top 5% right now. And what that means is that players who score in the top 5% of fantasy or of showdown scores, and what percentage of the time they do that, right? So Rory McIlroy, 23.6% of the time. Hideki Matsuyama, 23.5% of the time. Today, neither of them were in there. Actually, they both at top 50%. Both of these guys were in the bottom 25%. So that was their 20% of the time, or 25% of the time they don't necessarily show up here. So again, we know that these good guys are going to score. What I'm looking for is I'm looking at the sides here and saying, okay, who are some of these cheaper guys that can pop up here? So like an Eric Van Rooyen, he scores in the top 5% quite a bit. Smaller sample, but not bad, right? Lanto Griffin, CH3, who we said is a much better round 2 scorer. Maybe he's an interesting play tomorrow. Joel Damon, Brooks Koepka, Victor Hovland, Brendan Todd, very high percentage, top 5 percentage points scoring there. Shane Lowry, Brandt Snedeker, who I think is maybe a little bit interesting tomorrow if he can figure his game out. Bryson DeChambeau. The other thing I want to see is, okay, is there anything, so like these top 10%, is there anything that sticks out over here like a sore thumb? Like Bryson scores in the top 10%, 23.1% of the time. Okay, good to know. Sungjae, 23% of the time, or 22, right? Answer, 19. These guys that stick out a little bit, right? Then those are the names that you start to write down as you're kind of crafting your pool. All right. And then, the other thing you can look at is bogey free round. There was lots of bogeys on the course today. It's not necessarily something that I'm going to be targeting tomorrow. But there are courses where, you do get those bogey free bonuses. We only saw a couple today, I believe, out there, but those are definitely something to look at if we're not seeing as many bogeys like we did this week, or like we did today. All right, now, so that's the first thing I look at. The next thing I look at is I want to look at the strokes gained data. All right. So if I can bring that up. So what I use for strokes gained data, there's a bunch of different sites out there. Hopefully it's something that maybe we can put in on DFS Army at some point. But right now, the information's free. If you guys never use datagolf.org, it is, probably my favorite site to use. It's where we find, when guys are saying like, oh, it's 35% that it's going to be -2 for the cut tomorrow, right? They're using this site, Data Golf. All right. So in Showdown, what we want to look for statistics, and you can find it here. There's a bunch of other sites that have it. You can find this information in the PGA Tour app. It's very easy to get to. I just like this here because it's aggregated, and I can sort, right? And that's really what I want to do. So what I like to look for when I'm looking at Showdown is I want to find guys who are gaining strokes approach, right? So that means that they're gaining strokes with their irons. All right. So the first thing I come in here and do is click is I just want to sort by strokes gained approach. Jordan Spieth led the field in strokes gained approach today. I saw something earlier in another guy's database. He had 380 some rounds for Jordan Spieth, and this was his 4th best strokes gained approach round ever. So that's something that you want to look at too, right? Because is that sustainable? All right. Is Jordan Spieth a good iron player? The reality is no, he's not. All right. So this 3.85 strokes gained approach is not sustainable. That's not something that we're going to see him do again tomorrow in all likelihood. All right. And along with, so like Ian Poulter, right? Ian Poulter gained 3 strokes, almost 4 full strokes approach today, 3.7. He had a very good round, 7 under. But my concern with Poulter, again, is this number right here, plus 2.44 strokes gained putting. All right. So now what I'll do is so I'm like, okay, do I want to play Poulter tomorrow? We're not even looking at TD times yet. I'm just kind of trying to figure out where I'm going with my pool. All right. Poulter. So I already crossed off Spieth from my list, right? Even though he's a decent round 2 scorer, right? But for me, it's just, I know that he's not going to be able to replicate that sort of game with his irons again tomorrow. If he does, great. He beat me. All right. So what I'll do now is I'll look, okay, Poulter's next on that list. 2.44 strokes gained putting, which is quite a bit, right? When you think about it, that's quite a bit strokes gained putting, almost 2.5 strokes. So essentially what that's telling you is that essentially if he didn't do that, he'd probably shoot 4 under today, right? If he putted to a baseline of 0. But this 2.44 strokes gained putting, what I do now is I'm going to go look back at the research station, and I'm going to say, okay, 2.44, is that, where is he at for his typical baseline? So I can scroll down to Ian Poulter. Gosh, he was cheap this week. He's got great history here, right? So that's one thing I can say, okay, yep, he's done this here before. And I scroll all the way over and I find out that, yes, Poulter is a very good putter, right? You can see this down over here. His Bermuda baseline is 0.70 strokes gained approach, or strokes gained putting. His last 10 rounds are 0.63. What was his score today? 2.44. So in all likelihood, what's going to happen to that number tomorrow, right? In all likelihood, that number is going to return to the baseline a little bit. All right. Again, so, and also with approach, right? Approach tends to, if you're hitting it well, you tend to be able to continue to hit it well throughout a tournament. Whereas putting, you can have a really hot day, but in all likelihood, you're likely to return to your baseline, or even worse the next day. Putting is much more variant than strokes gained approach, right? But here, it does pay to look at that. Poulter's last 10 rounds, 0.26, last 20, 0.25, right? And he gained almost 4 strokes. So what's the likelihood of that number going back a little bit too, right? So both those numbers are likely to fall back to the baseline. All right. So are we going to see Poulter have that sort of performance again tomorrow? Maybe. But what do the numbers tell us is going to happen? He's going to revert to his baseline, right? They're baselines for a reason. We tend to go back to that number more often than not. All right. So now for me, that takes Poulter out of my list, regardless of tee time, regardless of whatever. And typically when we're looking at Showdown, when you're looking at my cheat sheets, a lot of times we don't have those top guys on the sheet, right? And that's because they're just playing above their baseline. And I'm betting that they come back to that baseline the next day. All right. So let's look at an example of somebody now who can be better tomorrow, right? So if we go back to Data Golf and slide into there, we can find that the next guy I believe on the list is actually the next one I want to take a look at, because I think he's in good shape to, oopsies, jump into the next tier. So if I strokes gained approach. All right. So we're going to look at Abe Answer. So Answer gained 3.27 strokes approach today, lost strokes around the green, and he lost 1.26 around or by putting. And actually we can look at Neiman too, right? They gained the exact same amount of strokes tee to green. Pretty close everywhere else. Let's look at both of these guys. All right. So we know that they were good with their irons today. I mean, typically just from, I've been doing this a long time. I know that they're both pretty good iron players. So if we bring this back up now, we can see what their putting is going to do. are they typically bad putters? Are they typically good putters? Let's find out. All right, so we're gonna look at Answer first. All right, Answer is typically, if we look here all the way over to the side, Answer is a very mediocre putter. All right, on average, he's above, but he's not very good on Bermuda. All right, minus 0.23. But remember that number today was minus 1.26. So he actually, is due a positive regression tomorrow, right? So what that means that is his putting is likely to improve tomorrow. All right, it's likely to go back to that baseline. And these are the guys that we want to target in Showdown. Let's see, what's his iron play is usually pretty good. Like I said, 0.3, right? And that might come back a little bit too, right? But again, like I said, iron play typically sort of lasts, and so does off the tee play. But putting is wildly variant. So we want to target these guys that are going to see their putter return to the norm. All right. So Answer is going to likely or hopefully at minimum return a full stroke back to the norm. And that can be as many as, 2-3 birdies, right? He lips it out a couple of times, things like that. All right, let's look at Neiman now. Where is he? Gosh, he played good last weekend. 72, 65, 72, 65. So Neiman, very similar situation, right? Minus 0.19 on Bermuda. They're almost the exact same player, right? So we can see that Neiman is another very good play for tomorrow. And really that's how I go through my whole cheat sheet is I'm looking at, okay, where are my opportunities for a guy to jump back up to his baseline and get better, right? And improve tomorrow. And it can, typically we look at putting, but let's see here. I can see if maybe, somebody was really bad somewhere today. Like I said, putting is the most variant. But, I can, it was somebody really bad off the tee today. Marty Trainer, typical. Nick Watt. Okay, so Nick Watney being really bad off the tee is not a normal thing for him. That being said, this is normal and this is not normal. It's not normal for him to gain that many strokes putting. So when again, once you do this enough, you start to realize like, okay, hey, where's my, what's my issues here, things like that. And you can start to, decipher this without having to go back and forth. But, anybody else? I think Hadwin's interesting tomorrow at 0.256. He's not a great putter to begin with, but he also had a penalty stroke today that hurt him. That was that off the tee number that killed him. Anybody who was really bad putting today. I almost automatically play these guys sometimes, because, perfect. Sergio, right? I think we're going to have to look at tee times here in a second, but Sergio is just like, this is going to be an auto play for me tomorrow. I think Sergio makes the list. Like, there's no way Sergio is losing 3.91 strokes putting. It's just not going to happen. Charles Howell III. I don't like that his approach numbers aren't great, but minus 3.6, like definitely in play for my player pool, right? As we scroll down, Soon Kang, maybe, the hard part is that we want guys who are making birdies, right? So Kokrak, minus 2.6 approach, 2.03 minus putting. He's not a great putter, right? So maybe that's a guy that finds his way into my pool as well. Like we already talked about Hadwin, Answer, Neiman, Danny Lee is definitely interesting. And here's the thing about Danny Lee tomorrow, right? Is Danny Lee's going to be out there bright and early in the morning. And the other thing that we can look at here at Data Golf is to find how the scoring went today. All right. So we can see that the overall scoring for the day was minus 0.85. So on average, the players shot minus 0.85, right? They played the front under par, almost a full stroke, and they played the back over par, 0.16. All right. And they have all this other cool data down here if you want to look at it. But what I really want to see for Showdown is, was there a wave split? And there was a big time wave split. So the green numbers here are the morning waves, the guys that teed off in the AM, and the orange numbers here are the guys that teed off in the PM, right? So that's almost a full stroke. So what that means is that the AM tee times played this or shot almost a full stroke better on average than the guys in the afternoon, right? So for Showdown, what does that mean? That means that we want to target guys primarily who tee off in the morning tomorrow. And the hard part is that there's going to be some guys that show up and look really good that are teeing off in the afternoon. Are guys that tee off in the afternoon, if there's like a full stroke difference, is that a big deal? It is, but guys can still go low. We saw Webb shoot a great number, but the primary issue is that we think that, typically these guys are going to, in the morning, you're going to have more chances for guys to go low. So, like I said, we want to target the guys in the morning. And how do we find that out? You can go to your app. I like to just go to pgatour.com and check out the tee times. And make sure okay, we've already done some preliminary looks here. Is anybody showing up here on the other side? All right. So, first guy's out tomorrow morning. Oh, look who's out bright and early. Abe Answer, right? So what does that tell me? Abe Answer fits the bill for me. He's due some positive regression. Now he's the first guy out on the course from hole 10, right? So he gets to warm up a little, and then he gets to play the front that's been, way easier. Right. So Abe Answer is showing is currently in that discussion as a core play for me. All right. So I really like Abe Answer. Danny Lee. Like him. Bazoot, who we liked a lot. We don't have a ton of data on him, but he's a top 5% scorer. Guy shows up. I like him quite a bit tomorrow as we keep going here. Anybody else popping, right? So Webb went nuts today. Did not gain a ton of strokes with the putter, which is actually a little bit rare for him. So I think that Webb, out early, he's a guy that I faded in my my 4-day, right? Well, now you have the opportunity to play him in these showdowns, right? So you can hedge yourself a little bit there. And I'm okay with that, right? There are going to be calls that I make that are going to be wrong. That's just the nature of the beast when you're dealing with 100. You're trying to find the combination of the 6 best golfers that fit within a salary cap out of 150 in a extremely volatile sport, right? So yeah, there's going to be times where I'm wrong and you eat it. And hopefully when you're wrong, you can get it back on these showdown contests, right? So again, Webb's going to be a guy that I'm playing tomorrow. Bryson, I think, is interesting tomorrow. We talked about Gary Woodland. We talked about DJ being a great round 2 scorer, definitely in the mix. Justin Rose, I think, is a great round 2 scorer. He's a guy that I'm going to be targeting tomorrow. As we keep going here, oh man, nobody's going to play Sungjae tomorrow. I mean, what the hell, PGA Tour? This is the worst grouping in the history. You're making my boy Sungjae play with Andrew Landry and Michael Kim, who hasn't made a cut in 2 years. His best finish in the last 2 years is a 32nd at the Century Tournament of Champions. Do you know how many players were in that tournament? 32. And you're making my boy Sungjae, the future of the PGA Tour, play with Michael Kim? Get out of here. That pisses me off. All right. CH3 in the morning. Yeah, boy. This whole group, I don't even know what Connors and Duncan have done today, but this whole group is definitely in play. All 3 great showdown scorers who can really get it done. Palmer had a day today. I think he's interesting tomorrow. So again, you're kind of just scrolling through and finding these tee times, and now we get the break, right? So there's going to be guys in this afternoon who we want to play tomorrow. I think Higgs is interesting tomorrow. I think Sergio, right? I said I'm going to have him in my pool. He's an afternoon tee time. I just don't think that he's going to lose that many strokes. So Sergio's in play. We talked about how Poulter's not in play. So Poulter, he's leading this tournament. What does the leader of the tournament typically always do? He's going to be way overowned in Showdown. I don't even know what his price is. He's going to be overowned. I think we see more people start just because they have the data from yesterday. They're going to target those AMT times, but I don't know that that matters. Like Poulter's just going to be a plug and play for guys. Same with Munoz, that whole group. Not Kazire, he's terrible, but definitely somebody to watch out for. I think I haven't looked yet, but Rory could be interesting tomorrow. A bunch of these guys in the afternoon they just made messes of their rounds. Neiman, right? We talked about Neiman. So, in Neiman, Answer, right? We look at them very similarly. Answer's a little bit more expensive when he's off in the morning. So it's not a coin flip. It's a 75% of your lineup should have Answer and 75 should have Neiman if you're going between the two. Oh, Vic in the afternoon, that's annoying, but he's in the pool too. So really when I'm seeing like a one stroke difference between the morning and the afternoon, what I'll do is I'll try to make my player pool like 60-40, right? Maybe 70-30. So 70% of the tee times in the AM, 30% in the PM, right? Just in hopes that, we see that same sort of thing the next day, which we typically should. The weather looks very similar. I'm not too worried about it. So really in some weeks, I don't even look at it. I don't even care about tee times because there's just the weather looks the same all day. It didn't play any different from the morning to the afternoon. And that's actually nice. It saves me a lot of time when I don't have to do that. But, it's this week it does look like there's, some sort of, adjustment. Mark Hubbard, we're not playing him. Eric Van Ryan, we're not playing him. Not late in the day like that. The scores were terrible. Like I just watched that number just continue to drop as the day went on here. So we've looked at strokes gain data. Again, that's where I'm going to pull most of my information. The other place that I'm going to get, the last place I kind of look for information, and you can find this on the PGA Tour app as well. And there's a million places to look at this, but I like the way the leaderboard is set up on ESPN. I know it's kind of stupid, but you go to ESPN.com, click on the leaderboard, and what I can find now is, and this is just an easy way for me to stop it. Aggregate, scores. So we can see, Bryce Garnett. When is Bryce Garnett teeing off tomorrow? That's a lot of birdies. Like I'm interested in Bryce Garnett. You're gonna have to watch the cheat sheet, see if he makes it into my list. Talked about Brooks, right? Brooksy with 6 birdies. That's impressive. Bazoonhout, my boy, 6 birdies and he's off in the morning. Love it, right? These guys that played in the afternoon and made a bunch of birdies are really impressive. When we think about what the field did in the afternoon, like, there's Maxie's boy Bernard, 5 birdies, 3 bogeys. He hit 64% of fairways and 55% of greens. Get out of here with that. Gary Woodland, 71-72. I can get on board with that, right? This is greens and regulation and fairways, right? So again, it's just an easy way for me to kind of look at like who scored what. I can see, okay, who killed it with green and regulation, right? So Palmer, T3, greens and regulation, hit a ton. He didn't putt very well, 1.75. So Palmer might be in the mix. There's Answer, there's Neiman, there's Lee, like we talked about, right? If a guy's gaining strokes approach, what's his green and regulation percentage going to be? It's going to be very high. All right. Who was the worst putts per green and regulation? That's a nice stat to look at sometimes. Hubbard was the best. That's not surprising. CH3, Shane Lowry. Again, some of these guys you look at it and say, okay, they're due a bounce back if they're kind of like trying to find somebody that makes sense here. Glitch actually looks good, but there's no way I'm playing Glitch. Anybody with a bunch of birdies that putted terrible? So it looks like Danny Lee is maybe your guy that falls in down there. So yeah, that's really that's I look at the DFS Army. One more thing I look at, boys and girls. Let's look at it here, because sometimes when if you look at my cheat sheet and then all of a sudden, thanks, John Poulter is 8K tomorrow. Yeah, he's going to be chalky. No question. So sometimes if you see me like add something late to my cheat sheet, it's because I did this. And sometimes I forget to do it. But let's see here. Share my screen again. This is annoying. If I don't do it like this, then I can't see the comments, which is annoying, but here we go. Okay. So I run the DS. Okay. Because I want to see what Taco's projections look like, and I just run it like flat. So 20 lineups, tournament mode. Let's do 3 uniques. Give me a good mix, and I just click optimize. And I just want to see if there's, who's showing up here, right? And what is the optimizer going to do? It's gonna provide you with, trying to maximize points. All right. Let's get my 20 here. 22 players. Okay, so interesting. All right. So again, and this is not the end all be all for me, right? What I'll do is now, okay, like Billy Ho showed up in a ton, 95%. Now what I'll do is I'll go back and I'll say, okay, why is Billy Ho showing up and everything? What's his projections look like? What does his round 2 scoring look like? Why is he getting here? And that's where I'll try to I'll figure that out, right? The one thing I would suggest though is if you are going to use the domination station, like you can just run it dry like this and rip it out and see what happens. But try to create a player pool or use mine or whatever, and then either just include those guys or better yet, increase their, hit those loves on those guys in the adores and increase their projections so that they're showing up in more of your lineups, right? So what that would look like is, whereas I don't use like love adore a lot. I typically just go through and change this projection number, and I can look around like, okay, so like answer. If I adore answer, what does that give me? 44. All right, yeah, no. So if I adore answer, I bet you he shows up in like 90% of my lineups. Let's do this again. But yeah, this way you can sort of get those guys in your pool that you want. And then you also can, get some of because I am the first to admit that DS is smarter than me, for sure. Yeah, I get 100% answer here because he just projects as like a huge value. Bryce Garnett showing up, right? Yeah, this is where you really want to find. Really, you're going to look for those guys like Danny Lee. Yep, Jim Furyk we talked about. Rory's just popping in there at the end, Kiz. So again, that's maybe the last thing I do. And then I go in and I start building my cheat sheet, right? Here, let's start that just to give you guys an idea of kind of what that looks like. And I get questions a lot about is your cheat sheet in order of who you like the best? And I guess I could do that for you guys, but really what it is it's like frame of mind, I guess is maybe the better term. So who shows up first? Who have we been talking about a ton? Abe Answer. He's going to pop in there. Danny Lee, right? He's a guy we've been talking a lot about. 6,600, man. You can fit anybody with Danny Lee tomorrow. Woodland. 89. Oh, man. Some of these prices are great. Who else have we talked about here? Oh, we talked about Sergio. I'll put Sergio in, right? And a lot of times, it's me going back and forth and looking at different things and saying oh, yeah. So it's not necessarily in order. Really rely on, if I put somebody as core, obviously I really like them. But rely on these confidence ratings too. Some days it's hard, right? Woodland is like a 4-star for me tomorrow, right? I'm very confident in Woodland tomorrow. Sergio's a 2, but then read the thing, right? Okay, I like Sergio. I think he's got a ton of upside. He's not going to putt that bad tomorrow, but he's going to, he's out in the afternoon, so there's some risk there, right? And it's Sergio. He could shoot 85 tomorrow, and I wouldn't be, wouldn't be surprised. Sometimes, like an answer is a 5-star play for me tomorrow. Danny Lee is a strong 4-star just because, and you might read the thing and say, he's got some upside. He scores well, but he's also, he also just lets you fit everybody, right? So letting, that's huge sometimes. Maybe I don't think that Lee's in reality, I don't think that Lee's going to outscore Woodland, but in terms of building a lineup, I think that he makes more things work than Gary Woodland does at their price tag. So that's why he gets, if those cheaper guys have higher star ratings, that means that they're likely guys that I'm, filling in and saying okay, this guy makes a lot of sense for the lineups that I'm building. Because again, I guess that's maybe the part that I didn't show is a lot of times, now what I'll do is I'll start creating this lineup or this cheat sheet and I'll start building lineups. and saying like, okay, who can I fit where, right? And sometimes it's all of a sudden I'm building, and I build 5, 6, 7, 8 with different guys, and all of a sudden maybe like Tony Finau shows up in a bunch, right? Well, now I got to go back and say, okay, what's going on with Finau? What does he look like? Where am I coming in at here, and why? Is there anybody else in that price range that maybe fits better? And so I try to do that within a couple of hours of the golf ending for the day, which is a lot of times really hard, and putting down my kids for bed. So I appreciate your guys' bearing with me on building these cheat sheets sometimes, and maybe not getting them out till 9 or 9:30. So, all right. So I am going to build this cheat sheet now. All right. Answer D, Rose, DJ, Webby, Woodland. Yeah, that's a good lineup, right? Just run that out there tomorrow. Like that. Get Bezzy Boy in there. Yeah. So I'm going to wrap up this cheat sheet for you guys. I will tag you in the Slack when it is done. And then we'll go from there. So I appreciate this. I hope this helped you, me kind of going through my process can help you sort of build your own. I talked about this on the Chalk Donkey last week when I play new sports, what I try to do, and even in sports that I play all the time, right? Like NFL. My goal is for NFL each week is to not look at Geek's sheet. It's really hard. I don't want to click on Geek's sheet. I don't want to click on Keg's sheet. I don't want to click on Chris's. Like, my goal is I'm not going to look at anything until I'm done, or like mostly done with mine. At the very least, done with my player pool, right? Because I want that, like, okay, I'm playing A, B, and C. Like, is Geek on these guys too, right? And if he's not, why? And I think that's really good for your process sometimes to be able to look at your own stuff, and then, hey, oh, this is where this guy was at, right? And I'm that's awesome, right? We match, or man, they were different. Maybe I need to go back and look at my stuff and go, okay, what do I do, right? And maybe you question it, and then sometimes the other person, like, I hope Geek's not watching, but like, if I'm right on somebody and he's wrong, like, that's a big win. I love that. So I hope this helped. And we'll hopefully get her going in round 2 tomorrow. I hope Decky and Sung JM figure their freaking lives out, and we go from there and get those guys across the cut line. All right, cheers, boys.